Good evening, all. Thank you very much for joining in on this EPSSL initiative, a series of online Zoom meetings that we are having. Thank you, Shamini, and your team for putting this together. Before we continue, I would please ask you to mute your mic as well as your video. And if you have any questions, please do post it on the chat so that we can take it up at the end of the presentation. Now, today we have Professor Raveen Hanwella. So, Raveen has been a member of PSSL and a very close friend of the society. He's married to another photographer, another professor of psychiatry, Varuni. I believe she's joining in and she's right now in. Let me give you a brief introduction of Raveen. Let me show you the Colombo University website, where he's listed as the head of the Department of Psychiatry in the Faculty of Medicine. And if you go to his qualifications, of course, I was particularly interested in looking at his awards and orations in many publications which are available on Amazon, a long teaching experience as an examiner and so on. So before we go on to the presentation, since Varuni is also online, let me just say I believe Raveen would probably touch on these areas in his presentation. But I would like to spend 1 or 2 minutes just asking them their thoughts and their observations of COVID. Very briefly, if we can hear.
Psychiatrists, we are not kind of immune from the effects of COVID. So, yeah.
Right. So, how is Varuni? What is her impressions of Australia and how COVID has affected Australia? I hope Varuni, can you hear us?
Yeah. Yes.
Why don't you tell us something about that?
Yes, Ramesh. I think there are some cultural differences as well here. I think as far as COVID goes, Australia is similar to Sri Lanka. Things are well under control. One thing is, of course, the social isolation of the elderly people. So here there are large numbers of care homes. So there was a big worry about it spreading to the care homes. And most of the elderly people live alone. So in the initial period when there was a lockdown, there was a lot of worry about how can these people go to the shops and how can they get food and things like that. I think that aspect is a lot less in Sri Lanka. The other thing is now coming out of the sort of restrictions. Again, I see some very interesting cultural things. The things that people are most worried about here is one is being able to go to restaurants. And the other thing is whether their sporting activities can start. So these are sort of very different things because, of course, the job loss and the loss of income is a problem, but then the government is rich and they were able to support people who are unemployed. So I suppose those are the differences which I see here.
Right. So has it sort of impacted on the lifestyle, the way Australians took the way they looked at life and take it easy type of thing, you know, go for a beer on Friday evening, work less, enjoy more, but has it impacted that type of thing over there?
Not a lot, Hira, not a lot, Ramesh, because again, it sort of, you know, it's the numbers started climbing in March and then there was a lockdown and it came down. I suppose Australia didn't go through the same thing like UK and Europe did. If that happened, probably people would have reflected and, you know, thought of a different kind of way to live and values and things. But I don't think that had such a major impact.
Right. Okay. Okay, thanks, Varuni. So anyway, let's get back to Raveen. And before we start off the presentation, everybody, please, if you have any questions, please do type it in the chat box and we will take them one by one at the end of it. So thank you. Okay, over to Raveen.
Okay, Ramesh. Shall I share?
Please do. Please do.
Yeah. Right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. I hope all can hear me well. Ramesh, it's okay audio?
Yes, very much, yes.
Right, okay, fine, okay. Right, now I'll take a little under an hour, so there'll be time for questions afterwards. So it's now 5:54, we should be done by 6:54. Right, I got this idea, actually the unique one, the first time I'm doing this, I never done this before. And as far as I know, there's no other person who has done it either. I got this idea from an old song by Jim Reeves. If you remember, there's a song about the deck of cards where the soldier was about to be court-martialed because he started playing cards in church. And when he was asked why, he said in his defense, I don't have a Bible, the cards are my Bible. And each card represents a lesson. For example, the Joker is the devil. Now here, when Shamini asked me to do some presentation, I was thinking what to do. And then I thought, hang on, all these photographs have a kind of we have photographic principles, which we advocate as a good photograph. But I thought maybe I can draw something psychological and meaningful from the principles of photography. And as far as I know, nobody had done it before. There are no books on the subject. So this is a unique one. And I hope if all goes well, I might even produce a book from the presentation and have it on Amazon. Maybe free of charge for 1 month. After that, I can make some.
Let us know before you
I will let you know. Right, okay. So let's start. I have about 13 photographs. They are all my own, other than 2 photographs. One is borrowed from Varuni and the other one is borrowed from NASA. The rest are all mine. Now, the idea is that the photographs themselves are not for critique. They are not the most wonderful, but I'm using the photograph to illustrate a lesson of life. So it's not about the photography here. It's about drawing a lesson from the photograph. So let's go. Right. So this is it's a photograph of a street performer, which I took somewhere in, I think, Prague many years ago. And he's putting on his makeup. So I thought I can draw a lesson from that. And as you know well, looking at ourselves, and if you remember the fairy tale, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? And that's about Snow White and her nasty stepmother. And as you can see, this is a cartoon based on that. This is your last chance, mirror, mirror on the wall. All of us want to be, well, have self-approval. And sometimes, who are we? We are looking at ourselves, but are we the real person? Or are we putting on makeup? And that's something to think about. Who is the real person? And also, we all have this need for social approval. We want people to like us. And also, we like people who like us. So that's a normal part of human psychology. And also, I suppose that's one reason we are finding it so difficult in these COVID times to, we find it uncomfortable. Right. And in psychology, we have this little window called it's called the Johari window. And Johari is they are psychologists, and 2 psychologists, Joe and Harry. So what they said was, look, if you look at yourselves, there are 4 corners. We have 4 windows. There's a part of us that is known to everybody, which is the open part. Then there's a part that is known to others, but not to ourselves. That's our blind spot. And then you have a part that is known to yourself, but others don't know about it. And that's our hidden self. And there's another part that is not known to both you or the others. And that part will not be tapped into unless you do psychoanalytic psychotherapy for many years. And that, of course, is not something we do often. So something to think about. When you look in the mirror, what you see, is it you, somebody else? Or is it something that you represent, or something that you want to show to the world? It's not a problem. I mean, it's not a pathological state to want to show something different to the world. But if you're obsessed with that, that might cause a problem. So something to think about. So that's lesson number 1. This is, of course, a photographic principle that it has to be simple, that there should not be too many elements in a photograph. And this one has only 2 elements, well, you might say 3 elements, simplicity. So simplicity is the next lesson. And I think there's a lesson for us these days. Simplicity is not about deprivation. It is about a great appreciation for the things that really matter. So I think that's a lesson that we can think about and has come home to us during these COVID times, when the most important things are more appreciated. In the past, we had so many things happening in our lives that we did not appreciate what was important, and we had trouble choosing between what is important and not important. So in a way, COVID has some positive aspects of life as well. We are now focused on what is important and a deep appreciation of life. So I think that's something positive that has come about during these difficult times. So maybe that's lesson number 2. So something to think about. So simplicity in photography, simplicity in life, simplicity is not about deprivation. Right? That's the most important thing. You're not depriving yourself of anything that is essential. It's about appreciation, focusing on what really matters, and then life becomes a bit more simpler. Right. So lesson number 3, this is one of my photographs, the first one to win a medal actually. This is a vineyard in somewhere in Europe, taken from a 2-seater airplane. We didn't have a drone as such these days, and these are fairly common, I suppose, nowadays. And what do I get from that? In psychology, we have an effect called the wider perspective or the overview effect. Now, the overview effect is where we kind of take a broad perspective of things. And that is seen in the astronauts, because when they go to space, they feel that they cannot no longer identify with a specific nationality, culture. And when they see Earth from outer space, they see themselves as citizens of Earth, as one people living. And what they say, when they come back to Earth, they never become like previously. They become a different sort of person, where they have seen the world from afar. So that's the wider perspective. And this is a famous photograph called the pale blue dot. Many years ago, there was a spacecraft that went out of the galaxy, the Voyager. And when it went past Uranus, the NASA turned the spacecraft around to take a photograph of Earth. If you look very carefully, that little dot is Earth. I don't know whether you can see it. I have put a round there. Inside is the little dot. And that's the pale blue dot. And Carl Sagan, in his very nice tribute to Earth, in his book, Pale Blue Dot says, well, I read it out. That is home, that's us. On it, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who has ever lived out their lives. The aggregate of all our joys and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilizations, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every hopeful child, every mother and father, every inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust suspended in a space sunbeam. So that's pale blue dot. That sunbeam is actually the artifact. The NASA, when they developed the photograph, it came out as that. But it's a very iconic photograph. You can find it on Google. So that's Earth. That's everything we have done for the past so many thousands of years is contained in that little blue dot. Right. So that's a wider perspective on life. This is, of course, a common housefly. This I borrowed from Varuni. A common housefly. We don't hardly bother to look at these creatures, but if you look carefully, there's some beauty in it as well. And I see this famous poem by William Blake. To see a world in a grade of sand and heaven in a wild flower, whole infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. I think he puts it very well. So even in common things, even in small things, and I think that's the world we explore in macro photography, you can find beauty, and that's something to think about as well. And I think nowadays, when we are deprived of so many things, we can't even go out. And I think some of our members are doing macro photography, and we are seeing the beauty of small things, common things, little things. And that is something we can tap into always. So that's something to think about. This, of course, a very simple photograph, lazy afternoon. And the lesson I am going to draw from this is, in photography, we call it balance. As you can see, the two boats are balanced by the mountains on the right side, and the sky is balanced by the sea on the bottom. So the foreground, background, right and left, I think, are balanced photographically. And likewise, our life needs to be balanced as well. So basically, we have this balance between work and leisure. You can have other balance, like you can have other areas like spirituality and other things, but some people divide life into 4 or 3. But anyway, simply put, we have a work life and a leisure life. And it's very important that we have the two in balance. If one is out of kilter, then that will lead to stress and mental trauma. So especially nowadays, it's something to think about. What are what useful things do we put our time into? Your relationships, your values, your spirituality, your sleep time, or rest time, your work. And that's something to think about. So balance in photography and balance in life. The two have to go together. Right, this interesting photograph. It's a shopping mall. I think it was in Croatia, and I haven't really touched it up as such. It's as it is, but only thing I corrected the perspective because I was standing at the bottom and this was very high, and I had to shift it around to get it into perspective. Other than that, I have not done any touching. And you can see all these interesting figures in the windows. The shop pad windows are not open, and I put up all these nice, interesting faces. And okay, what I'm going to draw from this photograph, I titled it frames. On our right, you can see the same photograph. On our left, it's another window in somewhere in Croatia, which I photographed. And as you can see, obviously the frame on the right is rather horrible, very elaborate, but it simply does not suit the photograph. And the one on the left is more elegant. I suppose you might say, well, it might have been better if it's a bit wider, but anyway, it's a bit better than the right. The same picture, two different frames, and it gives a totally different perspective to the picture. So likewise, in psychology, we have this technique called reframing. What we say is, look, you cannot change things, but you can change the view you take of them. And this is given very nicely in this quote by Epictetus, the philosopher. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which we take of them. And also William Shakespeare, the famous poet, said, for there nothing good or bad in this world, but thinking makes it so. And actually reframing is the foundation of a therapy called cognitive therapy, where we ask people, look, you can't change life, but you can change the way you look at it, you can change the way you deal with it, you can change the way you relate to it, and that will make the difference. There are some things in life you cannot change. If you can change, then change it, that's fine. So whatever things you can change, you change. It is not a recipe for inactivity, but if there are some things which are fixed, then you can take a different view of it, and then you will feel better. So it's a very powerful technique, actually, which we call reframing in NLP. NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and it's used very much nowadays in even the business world as well, not only our therapy. And that's something to think about. So that's lesson number 6. This is a very simple photograph, but it's a reflection. The buildings are upside down. I think we took it on a photo walk some time ago on the Bear Lake. And the buildings are actually not the real buildings. These are the reflections of the real buildings. So upside down, I have titled it. And what is the lesson I draw from that? Well, taking a viewpoint or unusual perspective. Everything we hear is opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective and not the truth. If you think very carefully, even if in this photograph I took the real buildings, they are actually not the real buildings. What you see is the image of those buildings which are falling on your retina. And if your spectacles are reversed, you will see upside down image. So even the image you see of the real buildings, in fact, if I photograph, it would not be the real buildings. So in life, when you look around you, what you are seeing is actually not the reality. It's what you wish to see of reality. So in life, we never see reality. In fact, what is reality? Everything is a relative thing. So everything is a perspective and not the truth. And that's something you have to think about. So when we think, "Ayo, this is not, we can't stand this," just think carefully. Is that the reality, or is it something that you are perceiving? And in photography, you know that we are asked to see the unusual perspective. Don't take the ordinary one. So lean down, go down, look up, look down, and take unusual photograph. So this, I think, a lesson I can draw from that. And this famous quote is by Marcus Aurelius. So think about that. So think about taking an unusual perspective on life, and even what you think is real may not be real. It all depends on your perspective. So that's another lesson we can draw from. Right. Now, this, of course, a set of photographs I took in the Kelaniya Rajamahawiyara. Again, I think, it was a photo walk challenge early morning. And you can see a range of emotions in these photographs. On your upper left, you see this lady. I think she probably is not in a very happy state. Maybe she is wishing for something, or she is, I don't know, you can imagine a story behind the expression. And of course, this elderly gentleman here having a good gossip, and they have various expressions on their faces. And on your lower left, these ladies are having different expressions again. And this young man who is in despair, you can see that he is in quite a lot of distress. So photography, in fact, has, in a way, photography is a bit voyeuristic as well. None of these people realized that I was taking the photograph. And of course, these emotions would have been missed if not for the camera. And we carry these away, and it's an intrusion, but on the other hand, it's also opportunity for us to meditate on the human condition. The human being has the largest number of muscles on the face of any animal, and therefore we have the most ability to express emotions in our faces. And that's something we have to think about. And therefore we also have the ability to feel those emotions. If you don't actually have the ability to express it, you cannot feel emotions. So the person with the greatest ability to have the full range of emotions in life is the human being. So that's a very important trait we have, but on the other hand, that gives us the downside of that as well. And if you think very carefully, it's only human beings who get depressed and commit suicide. No animal in the world other than human beings commit suicide. So we also have a heights of joy as well as heights of depression. So the range of emotions come with a price. However, would you exchange that for the unemotional state? I don't think so. If you are given the choice, you will choose the emotions. And this is a famous poem from Khalil Gibran. Your joy is your sorrow unmasked. The self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. So verily you are suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy. Only when you are empty are you at a standstill and balance. That's very important. So only when you are empty are you at standstill. So this, if you are feeling that, look, I don't want these sorrows and joys, can I have a kind of a neutral state? I don't think that's very pleasant. In fact, in psychiatry, we have a abnormal condition called alexithymia, where people are unable to feel emotions. That can happen in certain brain lesions where they are unable to feel either joy or happiness. And that's a state which is very, very distressing for these people. So if you are wishing that, you look, I don't want these tears, well, think very carefully. It's a price to pay, but it's a very, there's a kind of benefit as well. So think about that. Lesson number 9. Well, it's a very easy lesson. I mean, it's about colors. In photography, we kind of talk about colors and the importance of colors. And as you know, there's a whole heap of psychology on colors, and different colors have different effects on our emotion. And this, of course, a sculptor studio I took on an excursion, not a PSSL one, but a private one. And it was very colorful. Of course, the colors have been enhanced a bit in the photograph. Other than that, I have not done any other changes here. And what is the lesson I draw? Well, again, from Khalil Gibran, let me bathe my soul in colors. Let me swallow the sunset and drink the rainbow. So in life, I think, appreciate the colors. And in photography, sometimes when you see the scene, it's a very bland and neutral scene. And we have this ability to take it back into our homes, and then using the Photoshop and the enhancing software, we can bring out the wonderful colors. In fact, we can change the colors. We can have whatever color we want. So color is a relative thing. There's no absolute color. Different animals see color in different ways. So color is one other reward we have got for our advanced brain. So think about that. That's a reward of being a human. And I suppose Photoshop as well nowadays. So that's a benefit we get. Right. This is a beggar who was again one of our photo walks. We photographed him sleeping on one of the benches somewhere in Peta. But here, using a bit of creativity, I have put him in heaven, so to speak, so that there are clouds above and below, and we have put the beggar from his drab surroundings into a different kind of environment, and that's the ability we have in creative photography. So what lesson can we draw from that? It's a fantasy. We have the ability to fantasize. Only human beings have this ability. No other animal has the ability to fantasize. And of course, all our films and all our stories are based on this ability to fantasize. And the master of fantasy was Walt Disney. And what he said was, fantasy, if it's really convincing, can't become dated. for the simple reason that it represents a flight into a dimension that is lies beyond the reach of time. So through our photography and ability to visualize and imagine, human beings can create different worlds. So science fiction, all the Star Wars are different worlds, and sometimes we cannot separate reality from fantasy. But then, what is reality? What is fantasy? One merges into another, and that is a kind of amazing ability we have, and that is something we can enhance. And I think our ability to do that can be enhanced through our work in photography. So that's another important lesson I can draw from that. Right, okay. You all may, of course, in each of these photographs, remember, you all will have different thoughts. So I'm quite happy for you to tell me, okay, you might have thought it's a different lesson. So each person looking at the same photograph will have a different thought. That's fine. And unfortunately, we don't have that much ability for kind of interaction in a Zoom presentation. It's a bit one way. But if you can think about it later even, that might be rewarding for you. So think about the photograph and think what other lesson you might have drawn from the same photograph. So let our imagination run riot. And that's very kind of the reward you have got for being a human being. So that's the positive thing, not a negative thing. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I'll mute my phone. Yeah, okay. So lesson number, right, now this is an interesting one. This is an interesting one. This is a tombstone. And if you look carefully, it's, well, you might say, well, it's just an ordinary tombstone, but it's not ordinary. For the reason, now this tombstone is not in Sri Lanka. It was photographed in Mauritius, which is an island off the coast of South Africa, Southeast Africa. And if you read carefully, I will see whether, I don't think I can zoom in. I might be able to zoom in. Yeah, let's see whether I can. Right, okay. If you read it now, it says, sacred to the memory of Ahaliyapola Vijayasundara Vikramasinghe Chandrasekhara Amarakon Vahala Mudiyante, late first Adiga or Prime Minister to the King of Kandy, who died, I think, on 4th April, maybe 1828, 67 years. Right. Now this tombstone, I was looking for it actually, because I read about this in Elmo Jayawardena's The Last Sinhala, his famous book that won the, I think, the State Literary Award. And he mentions that Ahaliyapola, when he was exiled to Mauritius, and when he died there, his tombstone is still there. And so when we went to Mauritius, a group of us, I tried very hard to find this. And after some searching, the entire group, we managed to find the tombstone. If you look carefully, there's another interesting thing here. If you look at it, there's a bunch of flowers here. So somebody in Mauritius is paying tribute to this tombstone. We don't know why. Do they think there's some sacred significance to this? So Ahaliyapola, as you know, was this famous prime minister, and his family was executed by Sri Vikram Rajasinghe in a quite a horrible manner. If you remember the story of Madhum Bandara and all that. And after his entire family was decimated, he joined the British actually. But in 1817, the revolution, British was suspicious of him and exiled him. His colleague Kapetipola was executed. Ahaliyapola was exiled, and so he spent the last years thinking about Sri Lanka, I suppose, and gazing at the sea. And he died there. So that's his tombstone. So what I'm saying is that each of the things we photograph carry a story. It's very important that when we photograph things, we also look at the story behind it. And some have amazing stories behind it. So it's not just a piece of paper, black and white. It carries a symbol and an amazing story behind it. So look for the story behind a photograph. And even in a bland photograph, I think you will find a lot of wealth of detail, especially historical photographs are very, very kind of has a wonderful stories behind them. So look at it carefully. Maybe read up before you go and visit places and look for the unheard of stories. These stories are not common. In fact, very few literally written about this, and it's only that Captain Elmo Jayawardena has written about it. Otherwise, I would not have known about this. Okay. Next one. Okay, it's a picture tells a story. So much history can be lost if no one tells the story. So if no one tells about it, nobody will know. You will ignore it and pass on and never know that you have passed something very significant in the world history, and history is something that you can learn from. So pay attention. Right, now this is a very kind of evocative photograph. It's a photograph of Auschwitz. Auschwitz is a concentration camp. You may know the story. After Second World War, the Germans imprisoned a lot of Jews and they were executed here. And Auschwitz is one of the most famous of the concentration camps. And I always had this kind of dream of going to Auschwitz. I'm a bit of a World War II fan. And I had this desire to see this place, and I got an opportunity when we went to Czechoslovakia, Prague. It's a 6-hour drive from Prague. You have to go to Krakow in Poland, and then another little drive to the village called Auschwitz. And there you come across this famous concentration camp. Of course, when I photographed this, it was a bright summer day. It didn't look very evil at all. But I used Photoshop to make it into a very kind of dark and foreboding, very kind of well, I call it Heart of Darkness after Joseph Conrad's famous novel. And this is a railway line where when the Jews were brought in, they were brought in cattle cars and they went straight into the concentration camp. And this is the railroad leading up to the main entrance of Auschwitz. And when they saw this, I suppose they lost all their hope. Right, okay, what is the lesson I draw from this? Right, there's another interesting, in the Auschwitz camp, there's another railroad, one of the original cattle cars. And on this railroad, I noticed a bunch of flowers. Somebody has kept a bunch of flowers. And if you look carefully, yeah, it has something there written in German. What it means, in Nerendem Gedenken, in honored memory. So that is somebody has kept a bunch of flowers in honored memory of all the people who were executed here. So what is the lesson we can draw from this? Well, in life, there's always black and white, good and evil. Black is, well, we think of it as evil, white is the good thing. And one of the famous people who were imprisoned in this camp was a psychiatrist called Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl, who lived in this concentration camp, wrote about his experiences in a book called Man's Search for Meaning. When this book, it says 2 million copies, but now it has sold 6 million copies. This is my copy, dog-eared, after many readings, a small book. I would encourage everyone to read it. And this is a quotation from his book. We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. So even under extreme conditions of deprivation, there were some people who were willing to share their last piece of bread. So something to think about during these COVID times, I suppose, when we are also deprived. Even if deprived, can we give away what little we have? Does that benefit us? Yeah, but he says if you do that, you will find meaning. You can take everything can be taken from man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude. Yeah. Choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances and choose one's own way. So finding meaning in life is a very important thing. And even in the worst of circumstances, and Viktor Frankl said there are no other worse circumstances than a concentration camp. So even there were some people who did not give away their humanity. Most people gave away their humanity and started even fighting each other and grabbing their food. But there were some who gave away their last piece of bread and starved to death themselves. So something to think about. Black and white, good and evil, and the meaning of life. So that's Viktor Frankl, and we have a therapy based on meaning called logotherapy. So what it says is people who have depressed have lost meaning in life. So giving back meaning in life is a therapy. Okay, so from there I'm going to my last lesson number 13. And then after that you can ask me any questions. Lesson number 13. This is just a very simple photograph of a railway line, again from one of our PSSL photo walk challenges. And these parallel lines of the railway line, parallel lines never meet, as you know. They go to infinity and they will never meet, though it appears to meet. That's optical illusion. So what lesson can we draw from there? And in photography, we say, okay, good photograph must have leading lines. So leading lines. And leading lines are essentially in life as well. In life, you must have a sense of direction. And in psychology and psychiatry, we call it values. Our direction is our values, not the goals. the goal is a landmark which you can pass and achieve. For example, your goal may be to pass exam, or goal may be to get married, a goal may be to get a job, or become the CEO of a company. That is our goal. But value is a direction of life. So, for example, if you value the fact that you are excellent administrator and a leader in your workplace, that's a value, and that's a value you can adhere to throughout your life. There's no end point. So likewise, the secret of man's being is not only to live, but to have something to live for. So coming from meaning, we are going to values. And that's from Dostoevsky, the brothers Karamazov. And again, from Viktor Frankl again, for the meaning of life differs from man to man, from day to day and from hour to hour. And what matters, therefore, is not the meaning of life in general, but rather the specific meaning of a person's life at a given moment. And that's something to think about. And I suppose in these times when we are kind of deprived and left socially isolated, a good time to think about yourself. Most often when you're very busy, we don't have time to think about these things. We are very busy. So now COVID has given you opportunity to think about values. Sit down for half an hour, 1 hour, think about where do you want to go. And values can be in different areas of your life. You can have values in your personal relationship, your family, values of your work, values of your religion, values of your leisure. So even having a good health, exercising, all that can be a value. So think about it. And I will leave you with this last slide. Think about these questions. So what is important to you? What do you want your life to be? What sort of a person do you want to be? What sort of relations do you want to build? If you are not struggling with your feelings or avoiding your fears, what could you channel your time and energy into doing? What is it that you would like to do in life? Right. So I have come to the end of my presentation, Ramesh. So I can take any questions now. So thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thanks, Raveen. Excellent. I need to recompose myself and pull myself together first. Lovely. We asked these people, everybody who's taking part today, to type in the questions so that we can save bandwidth and your replies would be much clearer. But we just got one question. I know whether it is auspicious to start with it.
Yeah,
Raveen wants to know why there are 13 lessons.
Right. You mean kind of the superstitious? Well, I ran out of ideas at 13, so I think so that's a simple answer.
There was no lesson in that.
And I can generate a few more later, but anyway, 13 is what I ended up with. Yeah.
So while everybody thinks about it, you know, it's a very interesting quote. I forget who said that.
Which one, Ramesh? I can go back.
I actually, it goes like this. I took a screenshot of that. It says something that I also sort of remembered. Fantasy, if it is...
that's Walt Disney.
Yeah, Walt Disney, yes, amazing. Yeah. He really lived by that, and what he said was, said cannot be more true.
Yeah.
We keep on going to Disneyland, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And that's not a bad thing, Ramesh. I mean, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, this is the thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yes,
it really captured that fantasy for us and delivered it in a manner that it's seamless across generations, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
One of these places where you can see, you know, 2-year-old toddlers and the grandpa all enjoying at the same time.
Yeah. So no need to feel guilty about it.
Exactly. And nobody feels, you know, shy or guilty. That's true.
Yeah.
And another thing is one of the other seminal quotes is which you also quoted is that events really don't upset us. It's just the view that we take about it.
Yeah, that's about the perspective. Yeah, that's right.
Perspective.
Yeah.
Just a little thing that I would like to know. Okay, so all this is inward looking. So it's really managing yourself, your thoughts, and how you relate to things.
Yes.
So how would you sort of you say sit down and start thinking. How would you sort of how do you spark this journey inward? What is your recommendation as an experienced psychiatrist?
Well, practically, Ramesh, what we ask people to do is actually sit down and plot your values. So we actually sometimes use what you call a bullseye. Mm-hmm. So bullseye will have different areas. They can fill it in. So what are your values in your, let's say, your relationships? What do you value? Honesty, transparency, depth of whatever. So you write it down. And what are your values in your workplace? What are your values in your spiritual life? What are your values regarding your health? So health, you write it down. So once you plot down the values, then you think about it and think on how you can keep to those values. So there will be goals which come in within the value. So for example, if you say, okay, I value my health and I want to keep on top of my health and be physically very active, but then I can do other things. So that would mean to keep on top of our physical things, you'll have to do practical things. You'll have to exercise, you'll have to eat good food, sleep well. So there will be some practical things you have to do. Values will not happen just by thinking about it. Thinking is the first step. After that, it has to go into practice. And also when you say looking inwardly, I suppose even relating to other people will depend on your insight. So you start from inside, but of course it will relate later. Others will see the difference. It will happen. The changes will happen. So that's how we look at it. Yeah.
So Raveen, generally as people, we really don't see our mistakes. I mean, if we are honest about ourselves, we assume that we are, all accomplished type of thing. So does our egos play a part in this? Do we have to sort of leave our ego aside and start looking inwards?
We never see ourselves. That's a very important to take feedback from other people, and that's something we find very threatening sometimes. Of course, in therapy, people are okay to take kind of criticism, but in normal life, we are very averse to that. We like people who say good things about us, and we avoid people who say criticize us. So I think we have to bury that dislike consciously and then listen to people. I mean, if it's unfair, okay, reject it. But most often, you can gain something from people who tell you something you may not like. So what they say is, okay, don't read only the books that you like, the opinions that you like. Read books which give opinions that you don't like. It's an exercise. Otherwise, we watch the programs where people talk things we like, and we reject the programs we don't like. If you do that, you will find you become very distorted. So once in a way, be willing to listen to people who don't like you. You might get some excellent feedback. Not easy. You have to suppress your ego and listen. So that's the exercise we recommend our patients actually, and say, look, listen and think about it. And that's the Johari window I said, that's tapping into the unseen self.
Yeah, can we see that slide again? I think that's a very interesting slide.
Yeah, let's go there. Yeah. Is it? Yeah, that's the one. So the first square is known to others and self. That's an open self. Then there's some things which are known to other people, but you don't know it. Others know it, but they know that you are not aware of that. That you go around making a silly fool of yourself sometimes. And the other one is not. That's right. Known to self, not known to self. Blind spot. Other one is not known to others, but you know it. So you are guilty and you are trying to hide it, and you don't want to reveal your nasty side. The last one is the one that is problematic. You don't know it, others don't know it. So that's your unconscious self, and that will cause trouble. Without knowing what it is, you will feel disturbed. So tapping into that is only possible in psychotherapy. That's not accessible otherwise. So anyway, don't worry about that too much, but at least concentrate on the blind spot at least. You can get some feedback, and then yeah.
So Ravi, this is like a mind map, like divide oneself, and the different. You have different scores in each.
Not really, just a matrix where you can maybe. Obviously, the problem is you can't fill it yourself. You can fill only the, I think, 2 squares. No, open one you can fill. The secret one you can fill. Other 2 are inaccessible to you. That's
so just relating all this to photography, Raveen, we when we have our programs, when you have our critiquing sessions, when you talk about each of the photographs, mostly on WhatsApp and so on. When a photograph pops up, it says lovely,
yes, that's right,
beautiful, and so on and so forth. So now we are told when you're critiquing or when you're sort of trying to sort of quote somebody, or you create this PR type of aura, you just say something good and then quietly put this thing to say that without saying your photograph is horrible, you just say maybe
that's right.
Just sort of got the colors right. So what you say is that is all bull, isn't it? You need to really take the bull by the horns.
Yes and no, Ramesh. But when you give feedback, there's also another way of doing it. So what we say is normally we tell we don't really say it's horrible. We will say, right, okay, first we ask them, okay, what do you think? What do you think is nice about it? What do you think is not so nice about it? We ask the person first. So once they say, then we quietly say, okay, what about this? What about that? We don't come out straight off with the false. That immediately causes people to close up. So that's not a good way of doing it. So true. I mean, some are very blunt, and we kind of pride ourselves on being blunt and say, I, of course, tell everything to the face. That's not a good way to go about life. You will end up with a lot of enemies. Don't do that. You just ask, okay, so what do you think? How do you think you performed? Do you think you did well or bad? And if you find that they have a very low value of themselves, then you say, no, look, no, hang on. That's not true. You actually did well in these aspects. But maybe these are areas where you can do better. Think about that. You don't say it's bad. You say, well, I'm sure with a bit more practice, nobody's perfect. And we are all looking to improve ourselves. That's the value of values rather than goals. Goals are where you say, I want to be a marvelous photographer, and that's the end of it. I have achieved it, finish. But like life, nobody becomes the best photographer. It's always a working towards better, being better in at least little aspect of yourself is better tomorrow. So tomorrow I'll be a little bit better in my lecturing because of this experience I've had. I'll never be perfect, but I'm happy with what I am, and I'm always striving to change things and improve. So I think that's the attitude we take.
So just to focus on a question that Marcel is asking, he asks, does meditation help in photography?
Yeah, it might, because meditation is in a way being quiet and looking at ourselves. And sometimes I suppose we, in fact, might even use photographs to meditate upon. We use quiet certain types of photographs which are helpful in calming the mind. Not these cluttered, confused photographs, but very peaceful with little elements are very useful to focus the mind. So yes, you can use it in different ways. Meditation and mindfulness is the catchword these days. So meditation, mindfulness can be a part of meditation, but not necessarily meditation.
Raveen, Laya from all the way from Canada once again, regular participant in our Zoom session says, let me just read his comment as well as there's a question at the end of it. Thanks, Raveen. This is more of a comment. As photographers, one of the things we should do is to look at things that others do not see. This attitude certainly has helped me in my life and in my professional circles. Can you comment on it, please? Maybe once your endorsement or anything you could add to his.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, photography, as you know, I mean, when you become a photographer, in a way, you start seeing things which were not visible to you before. And I personally, I find that after doing photography, I can, even in a very bland scene, I can see a lot of new things. I can see features and little things which would have gone unnoticed if I wasn't a photographer. So now automatically my mind looks at balance. I look at whether the foreground is there, the background. I look at the whole scene. In the past, I focus on only one. But as a photographer, I learned to be more inquiring, more appreciative. And yeah, it gives you a better perspective on life. That's quite true. The photographer's eye, as we call it, but that's also an improvement of your mind's eye as well.
Has it complicated your life?
No. It simplifies. Because photography teaches you to simplify. You look at a scene and shift your focus, that it simplifies. You cut down the elements and you get the essential elements. So that in a way teaches you to focus on what is essential and cut out all the clutter. So we can do that while taking the photograph or even in Photoshop. So that exercise in Photoshop also is a useful thing where you cut out the clutter. So that we do all the time, isn't it? When we are in life, we learn how to focus and pay attention to the essential thing and not get distracted. Otherwise, we end up crashing the car. So like that, yeah.
So do you draw a parallel, a very loud parallel to like a picture is like your real life and psychiatry or your learning to like Photoshop, where you sort of get the tools to amend all that and bring out a
correct.
nice photograph?
In fact, it's only after Samini told me to do, I looked at it that way. I didn't realize it, but once I started to develop the lecture, I realized, hang on, like, photography has a lot of lessons for life as well. And that's some insight that came into being after preparing for this presentation. So in a way, it has educated me as well. So maybe I'll build on this and have a few more lessons added on and, have
a book on Amazon.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. 20 lessons for life or something like that.
Yeah,
That's
okay,
it.
so,
Yeah.
Shamini has a comment, says that excellent presentation. Of course, there are so many comments to say that the excellent presentation sort of opened themselves.
Yeah,
so
thank
many
you.
ways of looking at photography, not only per se as photographs. She says, excellent presentation. The Johari window is a great tool to use if you really want to improve yourself. And the Johari window also can be used in leadership development programs as well.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's used anyway. Now even people use it. Coaching and people, they use it. Yeah.
They do use it.
Yeah.
And Champa Banagala says that, of course, Dr. Banagala.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Yeah, both of them. I only see Champa here for the moment. Excellent presentation, Raveen. Thanks for showing us to look at photographs in a different way. I think that feeling is echoed right throughout on the many, many comments that we have had on this, on your presentation. That's about questions that we have. Any closing comments that you would like to make, Raveen? And
well, I would like you all to think about this, and maybe later I might even put it up on as a kind of, I'll see whether I can put up the slides or even share. I don't mind. I mean, they are not that copyright free. I think I might do the book actually. It won't take too long, maybe in a month or so, and then you can download it free of charge.
Right, excellent.
Yes.
So I unmuted everybody. If anybody wants to directly ask any questions with Raveen, we have about, let's say, time is 6:40, maybe another 5-10 minutes. I'm sure Neela should have a question if she's still around.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mahin here. Thank you, Raveen, for that excellent presentation. I had put a question there. Now, in old movies, we used to see where an ink blot was shown. The psychiatrist shows that and asks the patient what they see in that picture. I know it happened now, but is that was that a technique that was ever used, and is it still used? Similar things where photography is used to,
some of the psychologists, they still use it. It's called the thematic apperception test, where we try to judge your personality by ask your interpretation of, mainly they use line drawings. They don't use photographs, because photographs are kind of more complex. They use line drawings. It's used, but the questionable value, because it does not really indicate our personality really. But it's an interesting thing, but no longer used as a very valid test of personality. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Anybody else would like to ask a question?
Yes. Hi, Raveen. I'm George.
Hi, George.
One quick question regarding the Auschwitz concentration camp.
Yeah.
You managed to take a picture of the wagon and the bouquet of flowers.
Yeah, that's right.
Have you got a color picture of that wagon?
I have. It's all color. I made it into black and white. The color ones are very nice. It does not carry the atmosphere. So I have all the color pictures. There are whole hundreds of photographs. Can do a separate presentation on that itself. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Raveen. Nice presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George.
Yeah, okay. I also see a question in the chat room. Raj has posted this to say, do you take a picture with a story in mind, or do you take the picture and sort of create or relate a story to that?
Both ways, Raj. Sometimes I go looking for the story where I have an interest in history. So before I go to a place, I read it up, and then I say, okay, I want to see this particular place. And that's what happened with Auschwitz and the tombstone of Aleppo. But other times I will maybe photograph and then think about it later. But I think it's better if you research it and go, you will find it's a better experience. Otherwise, we'll miss so many things. You'll just walk by and not even notice it, unless you have a guide, of course. But it's better to research, especially if you are going to an interesting place. Do a bit of research. Even in Sri Lanka, so many interesting things which people don't know about. So ask somebody who is a local and then get some idea of the place. And that will be a much richer journey and experience if you do that.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you.
Thank you.
And word of appreciation, you did a wonderful presentation. And I really like the slide number 12, which really relates to a given situation, because we see a lot of people are fighting for toilet issues in Australia and
Right.
America.
Right.
So it was a kind of a real eye-opener for everyone, I guess.
Okay, do we have any more questions? I wonder whether Varuni has a question for you.
Varuni, that's it. Must be late.
I'll ask
late.
him later.
She was falling asleep. You'll ask later. Off the hook. Off the hook. Okay. Once again, before we sign off for tonight, I think I must recognize the presence of our patron, Mr. Jody Livera. Hi, Mr. De Livera, are you hearing me? Yeah, okay. I'm not sure. Yeah, he's muted his mic. Anyway, he's been with us for a very long time. I must say that it is his 50th year as a member of the Photographic Society. He joined 50 years ago, just the year after Lanelwen's death. So hopefully we will be able to celebrate his 50 years at PSSL this year. Right. Do we have any more questions, or can we wrap up the session by thanking Raveen?
Yeah, just before you go, on behalf of the Photographic Society of Sri Lanka and all the members, the great presentation, Doctor, and we really appreciate the way you tied up the thoughts and the photographs and the descriptions. It's so well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Master. Thank you.
Right, Raveen. So once again, echoing what everybody says, everybody feels, everybody wishes. Thank you very, very much for a fantastic presentation. Once again, a new perspective like what you did at the Photopuri. I look forward to your 20 lessons coming out and finding, charting our course even this late in our, in our personal lives or whatever, to find some sense and meaning, sense and sensibility, as you would say. Thank you once again, and on behalf of PSSL, and thank you, Shamini and the others also for organizing it. Thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you, Shamini, Ramesh. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.